Are you ready to unlock your full potential? Motivational speaker, the comeback coach, and goal crusher Joe Rivera brings you inspiring leaders, incredible stories, and valuable lessons on how you can change, grow, and reforge your life. Now, here's your host, Joe Rivera.
What's up? What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Reforge Your Life Show. I'm your host, Joe Rivera, and here at the Reforge Your Life Show, we like to show you that the comeback is more than possible. And today, I'm super excited about bringing my guest on stage. He's a friend of mine. He's a consultant, an amazing speaker. Y'all are going to love the energy this dude's going to bring through, man. David Miles, welcome to the show, brother. And thank you so much for coming through, man.
Hey, Joe. Thank you so much for having me. Seriously, a deep honor to be with you and your listening family and with your crew. So I'm very humbled to be with you guys, and I count this a neat blessing to be with you. So,
yeah, man, it's absolutely a blessing to have you here on the show, man. Now, Dave, I've heard the story, but man, the audience, there's people out there who haven't. I can't tell your story the way you can. Nobody can. So I'd love for you to share with the audience your story, a little bit about David Miles, so they know more about what's going on and where you've been from and what you've been through.
Yeah,
And now.
Joe. So I'm a husband of Tammy for 25 plus years, and 4 kids: DJ, Jackson, Taylor, and Jaden. 3 boys and a girl. Have background in speaking, consulting, do a radio program, have pastored, have been a police chaplain, an adjunct professor, and so have a lot of life experience. At the end of the day, love people. Now, you're in Long Island, and we're connecting here, and I'm in Dayton, not Ohio, Dayton, Minnesota, by way of Grand Forks, North Dakota. So yes, I'm a native of Grand Forks, and I know, you have that look in your eye, like, dude, any of us up there? Because a lot of people haven't seen someone who's chocolate and Norwegian, which is one of the Scandinavians up there. So there's a lot of good food in New York. There's this stuff called lefse. You make it; it's like a potato pancake, but that with butter, brown sugar in the microwave, 12 seconds, super, super good. There's this other dish called lutefisk, which is basically cod soaked in lye, or basically, cod soaked in radioactive waste from some nuclear plant. Now, my friends tell me you should try it, but not doing it. So just not doing it. But yeah, so my parents were military. They got transferred from Bitburg, Germany to Grand Forks, North Dakota. When my mom's girlfriend found out, she said, Mary, there's only 2 places on the face of the planet you don't want to get transferred to. Why not? Why not? Freeze's the reason, and Grand Forks. And they're both in North Dakota. Because North Dakota is cold. Now, to give a picture of how cold it is, we knew some people who knew people from Siberia who complained about how cold North Dakota was. And so it's a bit chilly. But we ended up getting there via that way. I grew up in a family, the youngest of 3. Really neat father, entrepreneur. Struggled a little bit with alcoholism. And so my dad retired from the military, stayed there for schools and good education. Now, Joe, this is the same city where years earlier in 1882, they had actually lynched a man named Charles Thurber off the railroad bridge. And at one time, the Emperor Dragon was the Presbyterian pastor, the Emperor Dragon and the Klan. And so I grew up in a place where there wasn't a lot of chocolate. And as a kid, I actually experienced these things called seizure disorders. So I had these major grandma seizures that were caused by fever. And they were so extreme that they literally considered doing a hemispherectomy, which was separating my hemisphere or cutting out part of my brain to kind of stop this from happening. Wow. So I'm chocolate, growing up with seizures during a time where those weren't really known. When my older brother left to go to middle school, but then when he went to high school, I was in a school of 1,000 kids, only African-American, man. So they had diversity right here, okay? And even though my name starts and ends with a D, some thought it started with an N and ended with an R. And I remember one day I was in class and one of my teachers she looked and said to this one girl, she said, hey, little Jenny, you know what? You're going to be something one day. You may be, you'll become an attorney. And we believe little Jenny became an attorney. And then she looked at me for some reason. She said, Mr. Miles, you're not going to amount to anything. At best, you'll be a garbage collector. But here's the reality, Joe. What would happen in my life later on as a sophomore in high school is I'd become a suicide survivor. Because my life, I should have been a statistic. The 2023 Center for Disease Control released this teen mental wellness stats that found that 22% of high school teens seriously considered suicide, 18% made a plan, 10% attempted, and 3%, like myself, required medical attention. And when I share that with people, they're usually kind of like, wait a minute, what did you just say? And I have to remind people to don't let the suit coat, don't let the accolades, undergrad, graduate, things like being an NCAA All-American, all that stuff like that. Don't let that stuff fool you. It's a part of my story. Yeah. And the reality is that every day, Joe, we're losing wonderful neighbors and family members because there's so much fear, guilt, and shame around this topic. And so, I'll share this with my students. And, I've had after class where once I had 12.5 students stay after class. And they were just like, dude, this is like totally hitting. I do consulting for the Federal Department of Veterans Affairs, Minnesota Department of Administration, Health, Human Services. And I've included a slide in when I do my presentations. And I'll ask people, hey, look, after hearing my story, how many of you would have thought that would have been a part of it? And typically, mid-70s to high 80s, people will answer between yes, maybe, no, not a chance. No and not a chance equals up to about mid-70s to almost, high 80s. But here's the thing that's important. The next slide. The next slide says this. How many of you have or currently resonate with my story? And Joe, same thing. Mid-70s to high 80s today. And that's one of the most important slides out of my presentation. And what I say to people is like, listen, don't go this alone, okay? We need you. There's people who care about you. We have wonderful neighbors that we're losing. And there are important things like the 988 suicide and crisis line that people can call. You can text the number. But reach out to someone, because so often we don't hear about these things until after it's happened. Just today, my wife had shared that someone within our school district, a senior, had taken their life. And, the impact upon that. And I've been on both sides. I've been on the side of being the person who attempted and survived. And I've been on the other side of being a pastor and leader and walking families and other people through this. But, your podcast is about the turnaround, and I want to get to that. You see, shortly after, well, I'll get to this point. One of the things that happened is that I had a plan. No one was home, family, everyone was gone. And my mom said the Lord told her that she was supposed to come home early from her meeting. And she came home early, busted me. Then I was taken to the ER. I'm still here. But shortly after that period of time, one day I'm at my locker. And my locker mate, Lance Porter, walks up, gets his books out of his locker. He turns and walks away. And then he turns around and I hear him say, hey, Dave. I said, yeah? Because what are you doing Thursday? I said, nothing. Because you want to come with me to Student Venture? It's like a student ministry group. I said, sure. Hey, Joe, that's 10 seconds. His invitation was a 10-second conversation. And that's the only reason why you're looking at me and your listening family is looking at me, because someone took 10 seconds to give an invitation. Because sometimes we make it a lot more deeper than it is. I mean, like, And I love speaking with students because I speak to students and I'll tell them, hey guys, it wasn't a big person. It was another 15-year-old who took 10 seconds to invite me to something. And I thought to myself, I have nothing to lose. I never realized how much I had to gain. And so that would become part of my turnaround. So I've kind of broke down some stuff. There's some more to it, but any questions for you right now or any thoughts?
I mean, man, there's a lot to unpack there, you know, because, you know, number one, it just shows how serious it was back then, and it is now, right? When racism exists, when bullying exists, and what can happen from that, you know. Man, I mean, first off, I just want to say that I'm extremely thankful for you being with us today. I'm grateful for,
Yeah.
you know, God saving your life, your mom walking in, and God working through your mom to help you overcome that challenge in your life.
Mhm.
And you know, I'm curious though, if you could go back and remember, because I mean it's years ago, I get that, but it is a tragic moment in your life. So a lot of times we do remember that, even though you were young. What was going through your mind when you're getting called, you know, the N word, when you're, you know, um, you're going through being sick and having, you know, this disease that wasn't really known at the time. You
Mhm.
know, what thoughts? What was that thought process like, David?
Yeah, you know, part of it, straight up, it sucked. You know, sometimes we make things cute and pretty, but some things in life, you know, it does suck that you're going through it. And you know, sometimes being the only one, and now when I got to high school, there were a number of kids who came from base, and they went to the junior high on the north side, and then we would all come to the one north side high school, and then there was another school on the south side, high school on the other south side. But you know, it at times just, you know, lonely and frustrating, and you know, because you take a stand for yourself, and all of a sudden the teacher's like, Miles, go to the principal's office. So suddenly you're in detention because other people are ignorant, you know, and things like that. And so there are a number of things, you know, having to often have a very good memory because, you know, as one of my friends, I remember his sister stole some jewelry from her mom, and she's all like, well, I know you stole this. And I'm like, no, ma'am, I didn't. I wouldn't do that. And she's like, well, I know how you people are. And I'm like, you need to stop watching so much Hill Street Blues. And you might want to talk to your daughter. And then later found out it was her daughter. Did I get an apology? No. You know, but there is this mindset. And, you know, one of the things that was important is the whole thing of about community, about good community. And so what was neat after Lance invited me to Student Venture is that I had great teachers. I had great clergy. I had mentors. I had some great coaches. And as a senior in high school, you know, after one of the most important days of my life, which was May 8th, 1987 at 10:45 p.m., when I went from having religion to a relationship with Jesus Christ.
Ah, come on, man, talk about it.
You know, and literally they're not here anymore, just like those burdens aren't. But I remember asking Christ into my life, and it was literally like someone took the Twin Towers off my shoulder.
Mm.
And it changed my life. It changed my heart. It changed my outlook. And, you know, and it gave me a different purpose. And here's the thing. It's not like I stopped having trials and issues. I just had someone who was faithfully walking with me who said, you know, don't worry, you know, I've overcome the world, you know, and greater is he who is in you than he who's in the world. And like, you know, some really key things that happened. And, you know, one of the things, Joe, was my senior of high school, I went 14-1 throwing the javelin. I won a state and national title, had the third farthest throw in the nation in the top 20 for my age group in the world. From there, I'd go on to North Dakota State University, become an NCAA All-American conference champ. From there, I'd go on to one of the top graduate seminaries in the world, receive the President's Award for the entire university. And you know what's crazy about all this stuff? Is that the kid who was supposed to amount to nothing even had a city name a day after him. But people hear this, and I want to be perfectly clear that I'm not trying to impress you, but I am wanting to impress upon you that your today is not your tomorrow, your condition is not your conclusion, delayed is not denied. And there were, besides Christ, there were three key things in my life, and one was self-awareness, taking action, staying resilient. Self-awareness, taking action, staying resilient. You see, Joe, that thing, self-awareness, it's the understanding of who we are, the things that make us tick, our values, all those various things. And when Lance asked me to student venture, I was pretty self-aware that my life was jacked up. No one else knew. Because later on, when I would actually share my story, a lot of my classmates had no clue that this was going on. And it's important to pause right here. There's not a zip code that's not being affected by this.
Nope.
Veterans, and speaking with the Department of Veterans Affairs, every day we lose 22 veterans. At the end of this day, there will be 22 veterans who will not be with us. They're ending their life. Construction workers, males in construction, mining, they have 2 times the general population. Females are 3 times the general population. But listen to this. I was talking with a construction person, and she said, David, and I knew this about farming, but also about construction. She goes, we really don't know the numbers because people will mask their workplace accidents or their workplace suicide as workplace accidents to not interfere with benefits for their family. And so what sometimes we might think is a workplace accident might actually be a person who's made the decision that they've just come to the end and they're just like, you know what? The other thing is this. I had someone share with me one day of an 80-year-old grandfather, super successful businessman, built a palatial home in Florida, got on his 4-wheeler, drove in front of a Mack truck. The family's like, what in the world? So there's not a zip code that's not being affected by this. For Black and brown kids, from ages 10 to 15, the second leading cause, but 15 to 19, third leading cause. I mean, suicide is an issue, and we need to stop pretending that it's not. Right. And so again, 988 is the suicide crisis line. Don't go out alone. If you're a student, talk to people on your staff. If you're in college, counseling services, student affairs. If you're an employee and adult, employee assistance programs, EAPs. Can't tell you how many HR people say to me, David, we know people have issues, but no one's wanting to use them. And here's the thing, Joe, because people think, what if I have issues? Number one, we are perfectly imperfect. Right. Number two, you're either currently coming out of a trial, you are currently in a trial, or you sure enough going to go in one at some time. And for people who say, no, not me, I just say, hey, keep lifing. Life will catch up with you. And so that was one of the things. There was this part of me not self-aware, knowing things were okay. Lance didn't know that. He just invited me. Now, when I started throwing the javelin, I told my coach I was going to win state, and he told me, Miles, if I can teach you to throw the javelin, I can teach anyone. So with the self-awareness that I wasn't good, I took action, and I began to practice. But not only did I practice in life, but in track, but in life, and I changed the attitude that I was coming with, the goals that I was living with, the crew that I was running with. And as I began to change those things, I also saw the need for further improvement in my life, which brings you to resiliency. Right. So resiliency is that ability to bounce back from adversity and hard times. I actually have a saying that my adversity is the fertilizer to God's future harvest in my life. that adversity, as you go through adversity, it's fertilizer.
Absolutely. Yeah,
To
man.
God's future harvest of my life, the faith neutral warrior is saying to my future harvest of my life. Now listen, some of the best fertilizer out there, Joe, is manure that smells like pretty bad. Smells pretty bad.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing, Joe. What's the purpose of a harvest?
Things to grow.
Things to grow. Things to grow because it's feeding other people.
Right.
So your podcast is because of the adversity in your life that you've overcome. And for people who would tune into this, and by the way, if you're tuning into this, you need to invite 5 other friends. Again, take 10 seconds and invite 5 other friends to tune into Joe's podcast. Because you might not know the things that are going on in your friends' life, but they're going to hear wisdom. They're going to hear gems that could save their life, and you may never know about it till after the fact.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Okay?
That's so real, so true, man. I always ask everyone to share the episode because you don't know who's struggling out there that can't catch the episode. They don't know about the episode. And, you know, an episode like this or past episodes could save somebody's life, save somebody's business, save somebody's relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, thank you for sharing that. And,
Yeah.
man, Dave, there's a lot to unpack that you spoke about. And, you know, you spoke about how your connection with God and learning to build a relationship was a big point that helped save your life.
Mm-hmm.
What brought that about though? Because there's a lot of people who are out there, you know, who end up taking their life. And, you know, you could have, and it's not a money thing, right? Because you could have all the money in the world and you could still have emptiness. I mean, I've been on both sides. I've had a lot of money. I've had no money. And I'll take having money over not having money any day of the week. But, you know, the money part of it isn't what's going to help you reach fulfillment, because we've seen it so long with I mean, just famous people alone, right? The Marilyn Monroes of the world, the Michael Jacksons of the world. They had the world by the balls. And what? They end up taking their life. Why? Because something's missing. And that's just the famous people. What about the average millionaire or billionaire that ends up taking his life or her life by jumping out the 52nd floor window? Why? Because there's something missing. And that something missing is that spiritual component. Because when you're in alignment with that higher source, you're not thinking about taking your life. That higher source isn't going to allow that, because you're connected. You have a relationship intact. You're in alignment with who you're supposed to be. And that's a big part of being able to unlock your fullest potential, right?
Yeah.
But prior to you finding that, you were empty. You were lost. You didn't know how to move forward. You're ready to call it quits. Where was that aha moment? I mean, you had a friend who invited you to an event. That's one thing, but where was that moment where you're like, man, you know what? I can't do this by myself. I know that I'm not going to be able to do this. I got to lock onto something. I got to start taking belief into this higher source that I call God.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the things was after going to Student Venture and being with some people who, you know, there was something different about them. There was something authentic about their lives and the way that they treated people and honored people and things like that. My youth pastor, Mike Montgomery, who's passed, was an amazing, amazing man. Another athlete like me, but just a keep it real type of person. And, you know, I like to say the word community means common unity. And so, you know, being with some really neat people, Jim Rohn says that, you know, you could be the sum of the 5 closest people you spend time with, you know, but having like positive impact in my life. But again, Joe, it comes back to that May 8th evening. And when someone sat down and shared with me, they're like, hey, I want to share something with you. Would you be cool? And I said, yeah. I thought we were going to be talking about like religion, you know, because I grown up, you know, all day Black church, especially when we go down to Kentucky, Tennessee, where my parents were from. You know, you could be there for 2 services and a lunch and an afternoon service and come back for the evening service. And I mean, like, so the thought of going to like an hour and 15-minute service in North Dakota was like, that's no problem. But instead, you know, the person start off with just 4 spiritual laws, just saying, listen, God loves you, has a plan for your life. You know, that there is something inside of us made perfect and wonderful and beautiful. And, you know, how do you desire perfection if you never had it, you know? And so there was something beautiful about that, and that there was a God who loved me. 2, sin came into the world. That man, between choosing God's way and choosing their own way, basically said, you know, forget you, God. You know, I got this. I'm all good. And in the Bible, in Genesis chapter 3, the devil basically comes and say, hey, listen, the big guy's holding out on the good stuff on you. If you would just choose this path, then boom, you'll be okay. Yeah. And we talk about the ways that people try to get to God, you know, by doing good works and, you know, trying to do more good than bad and things like that. Now, Joe, if you and I are sitting in San Francisco and we're sitting on the dock of the bay, watching the time roll away with Otis, and we make the decision to swim to Hawaii, who do you think is going to win, me or you?
Do any of us have a raft?
And see, the truth of it, bro, you're laughing because, like, I'd probably go about a mile or so and become shark bait. You might actually go cast away and swim for like 4 or 5 days like a Navy SEAL or something. Yeah. But neither one of us are going to get there. And why won't we get there?
Why?
Because we don't have the capacity. We don't have the capacity to swim from San Francisco to Hawaii. And in the same way, sinful man does not have the capacity to bridge the gap to a holy God. And this is where it came into the part of making Christmas make sense, that Jesus came not just for presents, but to give the ultimate present. And this is where Easter made sense, that Jesus died on a cross for our sins, rose from the dead. He lived a life we couldn't live, died a death that we couldn't die, rose from the dead to give us something that we didn't have. But like this, it's one thing to know things about something, you know, and it's another thing to know it. All right. You're looking at me a little silly. Let me put it this way.
No. I get it. I get it. It's one thing to hear something and think you know it, but it's another to feel it and believe it and know that it's true.
Yeah. And like, I want to shout out because like sometimes people don't get to see the very important people, your producer who's there, who's helping you out. Now, listen, I could come to him and say like, listen, I could tell him about a Snickers bar, and I could tell him about the chocolate and the nougat and the creamy caramel or caramel, depending on how you say it, and the peanuts. Like, I could tell him about that all day.
Right.
But it's not until he tastes it for himself,
right,
that he gets to experience it. And the Bible said, taste and see that the Lord is good. Yeah. And so the difference between knowing things about and knowing. And so that fourth part was just people have an opportunity, and God lays out an invitation to invite him into your life and do the great exchange, your brokenness and sinfulness for his righteousness and holiness and his working in your life. And so that's what I did. And it was the difference between, religion and a relationship. Yeah. And some really key things have been made clear to me over the years. And so that's something that's really special.
Yeah, man. And that's powerful. And because I'm a big believer in a big difference between religion and spirituality, you know, because I was born and raised Catholic, but along the way, I completely lost my way. Didn't even know what a relationship with God was. Thought it was saying Our Father, Hail Mary, and asking for forgiveness when necessary. But through this journey that I've been on, I've learned to, build a relationship with God. And, today where he's my mother, my father, my uncle, my best friend, my everything. And when I put that spirituality first, man, the doors that open, the mountains that get moved. And I've done that where because I've been intentional about building a relationship with God.
Right.
Throughout my journey, I've learned to, like sit with God, like if he's sitting right here on the couch next to me, and build and have a conversation with him. I always say, thank God for Bluetooth in the cars now, because people would think I'm crazy for talking to myself because of all the conversations I'm having throughout the day.
Right.
It's not just about like morning prayer and the nighttime prayer. Nah, man, he's part of my all day routine. So, for the listeners out there, I'm curious, what were some things that you did to build your relationship with God and learn the difference between that religion and spirituality part?
Number one, basic instructions before leaving Earth, the Bible, Holy Bible. I will tell you that not only knowing this word, the book that is the most sold book and published book
In the world.
number one. And if you take number 2 through 10, it's been sold more. It's been reproduced more. And because, this is not just like just dusty stories. This is like the living word of God, and it gives wisdom. And I mean, like, Joe, look, I was asked to be on a board of directors group. And I remember someone invited me in, and I was in this group, and it wasn't a spiritual group. And they knew that I was a pastor. And I remember one day I was sharing something, and one of the persons just said PDM, because they'll call me that. They would call me that for Pastor David Miles or Professor David Miles. And they're like, PDM, man, that's deep, man. Like, you're deep. And I said, guys, really, I'm not that deep. And they're like, what are you talking about? I said, I'm not that deep. I said, you know what I'm sharing with you? I said, I'm sharing the wisdom of God with you. That's what I'm sharing. Right. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, this thing that I just shared from you? I said, there's a proverb on that. I said, this other thing that I shared is something Jesus said in the gospel. And I mean, and I've told my kids, like, I don't gamble, but I can tell you that if you make this book, but more importantly, the God of this book, your pursuit and your joy, your life, I know I can see you in a few weeks. I know I'll definitely see you in a year, 2 years. I definitely know I'll see you in 30, 40 years. And your life will be utterly different. That's right. This is like literally knowing God's word, and like I'm one who like highlights and and writes notes in this love letter. And so that was really one of the very key things for me. Yeah. And like you said, prayer, having a conversation, developing a relationship. I'm like you. Like, I'm talking to the Lord all day.
So speaking of talking to the Lord, because I'm a big believer in, my relationship with God is so powerful and so vital to my success. Where God has helped me be able to build a new belief system.
Right.
And overcome my old limited belief system. Do those limited beliefs still come up? Absolutely. I'm human. Mm-hmm. But utilizing God to be able to overcome that old belief system. And when that belief system comes up, I'm asking God to remove my character defects, remove my negative thoughts, and replace it with positive thoughts, because our thoughts become our emotions and feelings. Those emotions and feelings become our results. Those results become our reaction, and those reactions become our results. So, yep. What are some of the old beliefs that you had to crack through when you were going through the struggle you went through, and before you built the new belief system?
Yeah, and I mean, and that's why it's an ongoing thing. I mean, that's what, when we talk about the word discipleship, meaning following Jesus, as an athlete, how many times did you just eat on Sunday for 30 minutes, and then not for the rest of the week?
Yeah.
Okay, and so daily nourishing yourself is a key part of that, and growing in that relationship with them. And so, I want to take something really short, because like sometimes people think like the Bible's just this kind of dusty old book, and they're like, I want to give just a short thing on how this is such a key thing. And it starts with Jesus' baptism in Matthew chapter 3. And so Jesus comes to be baptized in the Jordan. And when he's baptized, he comes up out of the water, and it says the heavens open, and the Spirit of God descended like a dove. And the Father said, "This is my Son, whom I love. With him I'm well pleased." Now, first of all, the word Trinity is not in the Bible. But in this passage, you see God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit present in this. But there are three key things that get answered, three key questions that gets answered in what the Father says to the Son. When he says, "This is my Son, whom I love, with him I'm well pleased." This is my Son settles the question of identity. It settles the question of identity. It's like the Father saying, "This one right here, that's my Son." Joe, let me ask you, what did you do in your own strength and power to become a son of the Rivera family?
I didn't do anything. It's all glory to God.
Yeah. And so that's the thing. This idea that son was something that the Father, he acknowledged his sonship before he did any ministry. So before he did anything that became well known, it was already clear on his identity of who he was.
Yeah.
Okay? And so, and the Bible talks about how in Christ, we've been predestined to be sons and daughters of the Most High God, in Ephesians 1:5. But the next thing is this. When he said, "This is my Son," it settled the question of identity. "Whom I love" settles the question of security. Could you imagine Jesus trusting in anything else? No. But the Father's love, "Whom I love." He's like, this is secure. And it's not that flip-floppy love, that mushy-gushy love.
Yeah. It's that unconditional love, though.
It's this unconditional love that God has from us. And then he goes on to say, "This is my Son, whom I love. With him I'm well pleased." That settled the question of value.
Yeah.
So the Father speaks these words, and we know the power of parents and people, but of a Father speaking these words. And so when I do this for leaders retreats, when I do this for C-suite people, when I do this for my college students, I tell them, listen, this is one of the most important devotions I'm going to go through with you. If you grasp this, it will revolutionize your life. Yeah. Understanding your identity, your security, and your value in God. And you have to remember, Jesus grew up in Nazareth, which was the hood, born of a virgin. So if anyone ever heard your mama jokes, it was Jesus. Your mama and your daddy were together. Okay. Now, real quick, I want to show something. Joe, what comes after the number 3?
4.
Okay. And after chapter 3 of Matthew is Matthew chapter 4. And it says this: "Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry." You think? Yeah. And it says this, and this is 3 key things as well. "The tempter came to him and said, 'If you're the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread.'" Now notice, what did the Father say in verse 17? He said, "This is my Son." The first place we get tacked is in our sense of identity.
Yeah.
It's the first place that we get attacked, in our sense of identity.
That's right.
Now, in this passage, that "if" is a third conditional clause. So the devil's really saying, Jesus, we both know that you're God. So show your messiahship early and change these stones into loaves of bread. And what he was tempting him with was the temptation of personal comfort.
Yeah.
And Jesus says to them, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." Again, he says, the word of God. Devil takes Jesus to the top of the temple, 450 feet above the Kidron Valley, and he says, "If you're the Son of God, throw yourself off of this temple, because the Bible said that he would command his angels to catch you and protect you." And the devil's quoting a prophecy in Malachi 3:1 of how the Messiah would come into the temple. And Jesus said, listen, you shall not, it is written. Again, would you ask me earlier? Go back to the word. You shall not put the Lord your God to the test. What's he being tempted here? The devil's basically saying, hey, Jesus, if you jump off this temple and you come down and do your best Iron Man, and people are going to go, Jesus, you're so cool. This is the temptation to personal popularity.
That's right. That's right. Yeah,
Verse,
man. Go ahead.
But it gets better. There's one last one, and I'll let you chime. Verse 8, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to them, all these things I will give you if you fall down and worship me. Joe, here's the facts. People are going to worship something.
Yeah.
And the devil says, all these things I'm going to give you. Now notice what your all these things are, and my all these things might be different.
Yeah.
But he says, worship me. And Jesus says to him, begone, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Check this out. That was the temptation to personal possessions, pride, and power.
Yep.
Now, you can open up Google and go to any news story and do an autopsy today from this little passage and see where a person succumbed to personal comfort, personal popularity, power, possessions, and pride because they weren't clear about their identity, their security, and their value.
Right. Yeah, man. Come on. You took him to church. Take him to church, baby. Take him to church.
Okay?
Loved it. Loved
And
it.
I'm not being, and I mean like literally, because there are so many things in my life that I could have got off, but because of not this country who said I'm 3/5 human, or Dred Scott ruling there's no rights, and all this other stuff where people are trying even now not to learn history, but because God said you are wonderfully and fearfully made.
That's
That
right.
David, you're a once in eternity creation. There'll never be another one like you.
Amen.
And I sent my only son to die for you. So you have infinite value. And so that's one of the things that helped change my life, because changing as a man thinketh, so he is what Proverbs said. So it needed to be a change in my thinking and even how I saw myself, and to begin to see myself how my Creator saw me.
Yes. Yes. That's what it's about, man. Realizing that you're not a victim of your circumstances and conditions. They don't control you. You control your own destiny, and you're a spiritual being living a human experience, and you can do anything you put your mind to. And your Creator put you on this earth to go and walk and live in your purpose.
Yes.
Anything else less than that is like a slap in the face for your Creator, for putting you on this earth, for giving you the opportunity to breathe, for giving you the opportunity to go out there and be able to live the life that you want to live. You create that destiny. Nobody else controls that destiny but you. Don't allow other people or other circumstances, your circumstances, your conditions to control the life that you want to live. You're in control of that. Not anything, not the outside sources. There's only one source that controls that, and that's the higher source. Don't ever forget that, y'all. So Dave, man, took him to church for real, man. But listen, tell the listeners where they could find you and what you have going on now.
Well, you can find me at David Miles. So www.davidmiles.com. So you can find me at onedavidmiles.com. You can also find me on social media, Twitter and LinkedIn and things like that at that same. And like right now, just a passion of impacting people. My desire is to help change the lenses through which people see themselves, their world, and transform both. And so I really want to help the way that people look through the lenses and they're seeing themselves. And on this area, I'm not a suicide speaker. I'm really a resiliency speaker. But this is a part of my story. And I personally would love to see 100,000 people turn from suicide to flourishing.
Oh, I love that, man.
Okay.
That, man. Love what you're doing out there, Dave. Love it, love it, love it.
Yeah.
So a couple questions that I ask all my guests before we sign off. The first is sign off. What does the word purpose mean to you?
Man, the word purpose it has just the idea of a focus and a reason for being and living, and it's kind of interesting because, Joe, it's kind of crazy. In the semester of my failed attempt, in the quarter of my failed attempt in high school, I had a 0.44. That's a zero before the 44.
Wow.
So then to go on and become a Dean's List person, a scholar, and then be given the President's Award, that was God. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. But the difference between that is that God gave me a sense of purpose of who I was, and even put me to live a life of purpose. And so, we learned in Greek that there's these things called purpose clause that give the reason for what you just read. And like, I'm going to tell you, like, Jesus is amazing, and that's the reason that I live, and I want to make an impact in people's life, and have had an opportunity to do so. And, I'm grateful because with Borrowed Breaths, I get to tell people that your life is amazing, that you're made for a purpose, that there is a God in the universe who does love you and sent his son to die for you. And it's not about just being kind of like religious and, like thou knowest beeth. No, like there's a God who really works in your life. And I'm like, and listen, when I say my adversity is a fertilizer to my future harvest and these trials, someone could say, hey, Dave, yeah, that's when you were a sophomore in high school. No, bro. When I started my speaking company and really speaking in where I met you at, because I've been speaking as a pastor for years, but starting this, when I stepped down from my role, I had a health thing that started May 8th that didn't finish until December 19th.
Right.
And so wherever you're at, you're going to have adversity, but there's a God who loves you, and there's a purpose for your life. Right. You're not moo and goo and find your relatives at the zoo. Okay.
I love
There's a purpose for your life. And if you're listening to this, there's a God who loves you. And again, yeah, today might suck. But today's not tomorrow. And here's the thing that's really wild. And Joe, you can echo this. Sometimes your greatest hurts, pains, and disappointments can be your greatest ministry and impact in the lives of other people. That even bring deep joy.
You hit it on the button, man, because adversity reveals character, but it also can align you with your purpose.
Yep.
And it's so important to not give up. And in that moment where you feel like, man, I do want to give up, look for that little flicker of hope, that little flicker of faith, and lean into that. Because it's so much more powerful when you lean into that faith rather than leaning into the fear of what could happen, of the unknown, and allowing the self-doubt and worry to creep up. Remember, that small little mustard seed of faith
right
open up so many doors and move so many mountains for you. Dave, when you hear the word reforge, what
reforge? Oh, you know what? I love that word because it has in my mind of something going through fire in order, like iron and like a tool or even a weapon being reforged through the fire, which actually means that it's got to go in the fire. It's got to stay in the fire. And as a guy that I know who's a metallurgist, he said that when they're in the forging, when they're banging and pounding that steel, is actually removing all the imperfections and actually solidifying that thing. Yeah. Okay? So that it's strong and useful. But it's got to go through a pounding. And I can tell you that the last 2 years have been some incredible growth and also some of the most difficult waters that I've walked through. But I've been so grateful for them as well. And I remember saying to a group of people, I said, how do you pray, not just like, God, take me, like, God, get me out of this. But what does it mean? Like, no, God, bring me through this. Allow me to stay in the fire for however long it needs for you to refine me. because like gold, you put it in fire and then the dross rises up, and it's not until you can see your reflection that it's pure. And in the same way, going through the fire to remove the dross of my life so that you can clearly see Christ in my life and see that there's something different. Because like I'm not that cool, man. But I'll tell you, Jesus is cool.
Yeah, he's real cool.
He's real. And he helps you with things like unforgiveness and cleanses that. He helps you with sin. He helps with self-control. He helps you with identity. It helps you with different idols. It helps you with an empty heart and loneliness. And so there's a bunch of things that God does. And so that reforging can be a process that you have to go through some stuff to be remade.
Right. That's right, man. It is a process, and it's not an overnight success, and it takes time, but you have to trust the process, and you have to believe in your creator that he's going to be able to help you get through that process to be able to come out on the other side. And what's on the other side of that? Oh, man, that's where the magic is, man. Yeah. So, Dave, man, there's somebody out there right now who's struggling, who's looking to maybe, take control of their life, but they don't know how. They want to create their own comeback story. They don't know where to begin. What's one quick tool that you could give them to be able to do that?
I'm still going to go back to this. And I'm going to say like what it says in Matthew 6:34, seek ye first the kingdom of God.
That's right.
And his righteousness. And all these other things will be added unto you. Because you'll find out some stuff that, because your identity is so wrapped up and your security is like, I need to drive this or I need to be with this person. And actually find out, no, like you're dope. Like you dope. Just you all, and there's something beautiful and there's something respectable about you. And so I tell people, just take today and just say, you know what, Lord, wherever I'm at, where I'm here. And lead me, right, and bring people into my life to help me grow.
Yes,
and help me to be a blessing to other people. So, amen. I mean, if you're asking me, it starts. It really does. And like, you have all this like money, physical, emotional. The center of the hub of the wheel is spiritual.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It just is. And
something happens when you let go and let God. It's like this body of armor that protects you, that guides you through the challenges in life and helps you overcome those adversities and helps you be true to who you are. So, man, it's so real, man.
One last thing, Joe, is this. You can sum up all world religions into two words: doing or done. Doing or done. What does a person do to save themselves and have a right relationship with God, or what's been done for them?
That's right.
And so other people say, like, if I do these penance things, if I march here, if I do all these things, they're all things that you're doing, but only in biblical Christianity does it say that while we were yet sinners, Romans 5:8, that when we were bankrupt, had nothing to offer, that Christ died for us. Right. And it's what Christ has done on the cross that makes the difference.
You got that right, man. That's real. It's so true, man. You always gotta think about, what have you done to latch on to that relationship? I'm gonna twist it up a little and think about what he's done to bring you into his kingdom, the signs that he's given you, the doors that he's opened. And maybe you ignored those signs. But it's never too late. It's never too late to build that relationship, y'all. Man, no. Dave, thank you so much, bro. Thank you so much for coming through. I mean, I knew you were going to bring the energy. I knew we were going to go to church. But, man, you exceeded the expectations. I really appreciate you coming through, brother. Thank you again so much, man.
Thank you, Joe. Again, honored. Thank you for letting me share with your listening audience. A little loquacious. Talking about Jesus and transformation in people's life and my own, I do get excited about it. And I get excited about this book because it's real. And so, again, deeply honored to be with you. And again, if you're listening to this, tap 5 friends, and not because I'm on. I'm like Joe said, reforging takes time. Right now, click subscribe, click favorites for Joe's podcast. Okay, Purposely Reforging. So, and also grab 5 of your homies and homegirls and send this off to them and say you need to get connected. Okay, and also if you're looking for someone to come speak, that man's got a powerful story and will be a huge blessing to your community, organization, your team, your school, whatever. You just need to bring them in.
Appreciate you, Dave, man. And anyone looking for a speaker, the man on the other side is also an amazing speaker. Hire him for his services. I heard a little small piece of what he has to offer today. He's got a lot more than that. And he definitely brought it today, man. So thanks again. And like he said, man, do me the favor that I always ask for. LFSS, man. Y'all know what that is. Like, follow, subscribe, and share, because it could change somebody's life and help save their life. Stay productive, stay profitable, stay blessed.
You've been listening to Reforge Your Life with your host, Joe Rivera. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about Joe Rivera and how he can help you or your organization reforge your life and regain your place at the top, head on over to withjoerivera.com and follow Joe on all social platforms. The Reforge Your Life podcast was produced by Thrive Loud Productions. Thanks for listening.